So welcome, and thank you for being here this afternoon. Please tell us your name and address.
Stephen Lerner, Stephen Lerner, and I live now in a suburb of Detroit, and my address is 23905 Woodland Drive, Southfield, Michigan 48034.
Well, that's a lot of data there. And when did you attend Senn? What years?
From 1951, when I graduated from Graham Stewart Grammar School, and until I graduated in 1955.
And Stewart Grammar School is at Broadway and Sunnyside.
That's right.
And that has been closed now by the Chicago
Public school system.
Yes, that's right. Chicago Public School System, CPS, and along with another school here in Andersonville. Would you tell us?
Just to finish out the elementary school bit, I went to Graham Stewart in 7th and 8th grade, but before that I went to Nettlehorst on Broadway and Aldine.
Yes.
And in my day, kids from there went to Senn, even though they were in the Lakeview District. So many of my classmates at Senn had been friends before at Nettlehorst. So it was sort of like coming home again.
Very good. Could you tell us any of your recollections of your Senn experiences?
Okay, yeah. On the way to school the first day, waiting at the bus stop on Clarendon, a young guy who was even smaller than I was, and I was fairly short and small, was dropped off by his mother at the bus stop. And he looked very nervous, and it turned out he had just moved to Chicago, and this was his first day of school, and he became a friend, one of my closest friends during high school, and I've kept up with him occasionally at reunions. We've had a number of reunions, most recently our 50th, which was in 2005, and it was fabulous. We were given free run of the school of Senn, and we had a marvelous reunion with almost 200 people from my class came, and that was great.
Excellent.
Well,
Very
you were
good.
the president.
Now, did you have any favorite teachers that you can remember at Senn?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. I guess the teacher, I had a number of favorite teachers. I loved Senn. I mean, I was a great student, so the teachers loved me, I loved them. And I think the most memorable was Mrs. Berman. And she had just graduated from Senn about 5 or 6 years before we did. And I think she went to the U of C. So she came back as a teacher. She was like an older sister. She was a little bit older. And I spent many lunch periods just talking with her. She taught history, American history, and civics. And she was wonderful. She really opened the world to me. And she's the one who encouraged me to go to Harvard, or to think about it initially. And in those days, usually 1 or 2 boys every year went to Harvard. And I did, actually. And when we had our 50th reunion in 2005, we invited teachers. Now, most of them were not alive. We went to the Chicago Public Schools, got teachers' contact information, and she came. She had left the city about 5 years after we graduated, and then she moved to the northern suburbs and taught there for a while. And we had the first evening was at Senn itself, and then the second evening was we took over a restaurant, and she came to that, and she really, and I was the one who invited her to come. I was president of my senior class, and so I invited her to come, and I told her when I was on the phone with her how much she meant to me.
Yes.
And I'm really glad I had an opportunity to do that. I had some other teachers who were memorable. My division teacher was Catherine Flynn, who was an English teacher, and she loved me. I mean, she really she was unmarried, didn't have kids, and she just. But I liked the attention, but it was a little bit embarrassing because she would comment on me openly in front of other kids. So, but Miss Flynn was, she did a lot for me. I learned a lot from her. And I had several other teachers. I had Geraldine Connell was my teacher for 2 or 3 of my 4 years of math at Senn. And again, when we had our 50th reunion in 2005, we found out she was living in La Jolla, California. And I went to I called her, and she said she was too ill to be able to come. But I had a meeting in San Diego about a week before the reunion, and I actually went to visit her in her apartment. She had moved to Southern California, again, about 4 or 5 years after we graduated, been there all that time, never married, and was somewhat ill, but really dynamic in sitting and talking with her. And I actually took photos of her, which I showed at our reunion, having seen her in her home. A couple of other teachers, I took Latin, and actually after my second year I was representing Senn. I was the Illinois State Latin champion. Now public schools were separate from Catholic schools, I guess, had an advantage with Latin, so they were separate, but for public schools. And I remember the contest, Latin contest, was held at Eastern Illinois College or University in Charleston, Illinois, and I had to take a train, and I remember going down to the IC station at Roosevelt Road and Michigan Avenue, and taking the train there was a big adventure because we stayed in a dorm and that sort of thing. So that was memorable. But my 2 Latin teachers were Mrs. Garrow, and I'm blanking on the second one now. But they really both infused a lot of enthusiasm into teaching Latin. And the fellow that I mentioned before that I had met on the first day of school, Ed Bernstein, he took Latin too, and we regretted the fact that it wasn't a spoken language. So we would actually speak it on our own. We made up some words, but we spoke it, and that was also a memorable experience. I just had so many wonderful. Oh, another teacher who was really remarkable, Dr. Davidson in chemistry. Dr. Davidson had gotten his PhD during the Depression, and he couldn't get a job in industry, and so he became a teacher, and he was wonderful. And in fact, my brother, who just visited this exhibit with me, who graduated 11 years after me in 1966, also had Dr. Davidson, and he was just sort of no nonsense, but in a very nice way. He obviously liked students and he liked teaching, but he had high principles, and he always wore a jacket and tie. And so he really stands out. A lot of people stood out. I think when we got together for our 50th reunion, we reminisced about Senn, and we were very grateful for the education we got. Many, of course, people who come to reunion are more likely to feel positive about it, but there was a lot of positive feelings, and I'm really glad that I've come back for this centennial.
Do you have any friends that you remember from those years?
Yeah. Well, one friend whom I knew when I was born, essentially. His parents were older, and his mother was a very good friend of my grandmother. And then when I lived during World War II, we traveled around with my father, and so I wasn't always living in Chicago, but when I came back to Chicago, I was living across the street from this friend, and I kept up with him. In fact, I saw him last night at Senn. Other people I've kept up by email and through reunions, because since I was president of my class, I've gone to most of my reunions. Oh, and just as an added, if I can add, my mother graduated from Senn in 1931. 1931, she graduated.
Her name.
Well, congratulations.
So yeah, Florence
Her name.
Trace. Her name was Florence Trace at that time.
Yes.
She's no longer alive, but she had very good feelings about Senn too. My brother, who graduated in 1966, is Jonathan Lerner, and my sister, who graduated in 1964, then was Nancy Lerner. Now she's Nancy Cantor. So we're a Senn family.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. That was excellent.
My pleasure.